Kent Mulgat with KelownaNow, joined by Doug Findlater, Mayor of West Kelowna. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Ken, for having me.
You know, what I hope to get out of this, number one, is that people maybe get to know you a little bit better.
Yes.
So we hear what you're saying about the issues of the day over there in West Kelowna. But who is Doug Findlater, and how is it that you ended up being the mayor of this community? You had a background with sort of forming the committee in the first place.
Well, I grew up as an Army brat, and we moved constantly in the United States and Canada. My dad passed away relatively young for him and for me. We wound up living in Kelowna. My mom relocated her family of 2 teenagers here. I was and went to high school in Kelowna, actually. I lived over in the Kootenays for a few years, and I was back, settled my family in the West Bank area at that time, and it still is West Bank, and raised a family. We're in the same house all these years later, and that has consequences too, to be in the same house a long time. I was working. I was a federal government community developer, but on the side I was a community activist through neighborhood associations and was involved in things, and there were 3 previous attempts, one in the 70s, one in the 80s, one in the 90s to incorporate.
And you were arguing against it. You didn't think that this should be...
I was always against it. I was quite content with the way it was. So when the committee was formed in 2003, the Governance Restructure Committee, I put my name forward. I was elected to it at a community meeting. Because I'd been involved in the previous efforts, even as a no person, but I knew the process, I was made chair of the committee.
Right.
During that process, and it was a 4-year process to do this, I became convinced. And remember, in the mid 2000s, the West Side grew rapidly.
Yes.
In the regional district area that was the West Side, and also in WFN. And I became convinced that the authorities that come with being under the Local Government Act were necessary in order to better manage that growth and put the infrastructure in place that we were missing, that we don't get, because Ministry of Highways looks after your roads and drainage and your sidewalks and so on. Water is under separate jurisdictions, and the regional district does not have all of the authorities that are really sophisticated in terms of capturing revenue and building infrastructure.
So I remember that sense of irony, though, when the voice who we heard saying don't incorporate then became very quickly almost the first mayor. There was Rosalind East for a short period of time in 2007. And then all of a sudden there was Doug Findlater in 2000.
Well, I ran for the first council. I actually wasn't in very good health that year. I'd had a bypass in 2006. And I'd had no heart attack. And I'd had a hip replacement and so on. But I felt, because I'd been there to negotiate the deal with the province for our transition, that I should be on the council. It would add some value. So I ran for the council, thinking it was a 1-year term, thinking that would be it, and then I'd go off and travel the world. However, I got to like it, and I ran for mayor the next time round, and so here we are 9 years later. So I'm in my 3rd term as a mayor.
Okay, so let's take this opportunity then to explore whether or not this continues. We've got an election coming up. Have you decided whether or not you'll be running?
I haven't made a final decision. I'm leaning no, because I will be, by the time there's an election, I'll have been mayor 10 years. There's other things I want to do in the remaining time on earth. I am in good health, but I do think that there is more to life than being mayor, and a 4-year term is just that. It's a 4-year term.
Yes.
It's a long time, as I found out this time. But I'll make an announcement sometime this summer. People will, if they want to run against me or run without me, they'll have ample warning. And I don't believe in 10-month campaigns, which is, given that we're in January, it's not helpful. It interferes with doing the job to be campaigning.
Will part of that decision be whether or not there's somebody that you can see that looks like they will be suitable?
Obviously, I've invested a lot of time and equity in it in terms of being mayor, being a councillor, the governance committee, it's beyond my wildest dreams in terms of how far West Kelowna has evolved. So you want to see it go into good hands.
Right. We're starting to see, all the problems that come with, you're a city now. That's one thing that happened during your
Well,
tenure.
we were able to persuade the provincial government with the help of our then MLA to reclassify us from being one of these strange district municipality
Right.
things into being a city. Maple Ridge had made a similar change, and we followed suit.
Is that just a semantics thing? Is it just because
It
the
is.
other term is more confusing?
As then Premier Clark said, I think city's a better brand.
Yeah.
It's rather than a district. What's a
Right.
district? And we, as a
It-
district,
yeah.
we were confused with the regional district and the school district.
Right, yeah.
Well, this is the city of West Kelowna, and everybody knows who we are.
Legally, though, it's the same.
There's no additional revenue or anything. It's just a brand.
Right. People sometimes look at West Kelowna and see it as a bit of a hodgepodge. And I know you've got good people working in your planning
Yeah.
department, but you've got some challenges there. You're squeezed for land, and you also have, taking nothing away from the things that the First Nations done, that decisions are made to develop property that you can't control.
Yes.
Right? Which are sort of functioning as part of your community. So it must be difficult to really plan on this.
It's an interesting situation, but I think we have a great planning department. Within the city boundaries, we do have the two WFN reserves, IR9 and IR10, and they are an autonomous organization. They do a lot of their own thing, but we talk and work with them very well. The other challenge for us is we have a tremendous amount of agricultural land that's in the ALR within the city boundaries. And adjacent to WFN land in some cases, and that's also land that we can't build on, and we don't want to build on because we value agricultural land.
Right.
What our challenges are is that the development that's taken place, and we are 35,000, has mostly taken place, some in the center, but around the community, around the edges of the community on the hillsides. And so old logging roads or wagon roads or whatever they were have been paved over the years, and that's how we connect into the center.
Right.
So big challenges in terms of roads and getting our roads up to standards. We're slowly knocking those off
Yeah.
to bring them up to standard, put sidewalks on them and proper traffic controls. One of the biggest challenges. The biggest surprise since incorporation, because when my committee, the governance committee, looked at incorporation, we did do a road study and we knew what we were getting in terms of roads. The big surprise has been drainage. And drainage will come back and bite you in the bum because you have erosion and slope failure and impacts your roads. We've spent millions of dollars with some assistance from the province in repairing the drainage issues that we've inherited, and I would say those are issues that were significantly missed by the Ministry of Transportation, which looked after our roads and drainage prior to incorporation.
Right. Which
So,
at least gives you an argument when you go
Exactly.
to get funding for
Yeah.
help. In terms of the sense of community, there were some difficult times. First of all, with the referendum to incorporate or whether to amalgamate, you had different neighborhoods that voted distinctly and differently, and then there was a bitter sort of argument as to what even the name should be, and you could see a hangover from that.
I think
Has
that
there been
those certainly the incorporation versus amalgamation. I believe that is well behind us.
What about the name thing?
There's a few people who maybe still wish we joined Kelowna, but I think most people are glad they've got their own council that they know and that we're not
Right,
taking
okay.
on the kinds of problems and issues that Kelowna has. Certainly in talking to Kelowna Council, and they look at our politics, Kelowna thinks they dodged a bullet. By letting us go on our own. The name thing, I think that's pretty much behind us. There are still some people who refer to West Bank, and that's fine. I mean, we set it up so that it can be both. That area is the West Bank Town Center for planning purposes, so there's a little bit of ambivalence there, but we've worked that through, and you can also use West Bank as a mailing address. So.
But do you see generally a little more cohesion?
I do. Now, the next one, of course, was the City Hall referendum, which was a very, very narrow margin. as well, and that was part of the identity politics that we have on the west side. There were just some people it wasn't, is they just didn't want to spend the money, but there was also some identity politics. That's left us in an awkward spot. We're now leasing sector space for staff employees from the private sector, and we're also located in about 5 different locations now, and that's not very efficient, so it's creating problems, but we are still looking at addressing that problem, that issue long term.
Maybe that's part of the answer to my next question, which is the next council, whether or not it includes you. What is the big job for the next council for West Kelowna?
Well, I think obviously the continuing with the master plans we have. That's the first thing, because we did plans for everything in the first 3 or 4 years, and making them fit, and so that you've got a 20-year financial plan that supports those infrastructure plans. So I think following those, and that includes water, roads, and drainage, and so on. The City Hall will be something that's on the agenda, and we're hoping that this council can find land to leave to the next council in the next year. Obviously, one huge issue, and it did enter into the City Hall referendum, was water quality. We really went to work in lobbying with our MLAs and MPs. Received a $41 million grant for a $50 million water treatment plant in Rose Valley Reservoir. That's being designed as we speak. They'll hope to do a sod turning this year, and when everyone is hooked up to that system in a couple of years, we hope everybody will never have a water quality advisory again. The West Bank end of things already has a water treatment plant, and it's taken care of, but the rest of the community, the 4 other systems which will be linked into the Rose Valley system, will have that same high quality of water. So that's a huge project to get that behind us. $41 million means we've moved it ahead 5 years, because we weren't going to do it until 2024 or 2022, somewhere in there. Yeah. So, but we went to town, got that money lined up. It's an opportunity we'll never get again, and we've got to stay the course and get this done.
Fantastic. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Doug Findlater, the Mayor of West Kelowna. Handshake, sure.
All right, thank you.
Ken Wolgat for KelownaNow.